Let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer on Lesson 6 from the 10-part Christian Care Mentor course. Today we're looking at providing information. Now, if you're stepping up to mentor informal caregivers, first off, that is amazing. Your desire to help is so incredibly valid. But right off the bat, I want to take a massive weight completely off your shoulders. You do not need to know everything. Let me say that again. You don't need to have all the answers. Your role here is to be a guide, not an expert.
Okay, so Section 1, Navigating the Caregiving Maze.
To really get why this guide approach is absolutely crucial, we kind of have to put ourselves in the shoes of a caregiver. Literally overnight, they're often thrust into this wild labyrinth of endless paperwork, doctor's appointments, and medical jargon they never expected to deal with. Just look at this quote from a caregiver named Maria. She said, "I don't even know what questions to ask anymore." You can practically hear the exhaustion there, right? When she started caring for her husband, she just felt completely buried. Let's really sit with that for a second, because it anchors everything we're talking about today in the very real, very deep confusion that caregivers deal with every single day.
Which brings us to Section 2, the story of Maria. So during a mentoring call, Maria let out this really heavy sigh and just opened up about feeling totally lost. Now, her mentor, Ruth, was faced with a choice. You know that natural human instinct we all have, where we just want to swoop in, offer a dozen solutions, and fix the whole shebang? Well, Ruth actively fought that urge. Instead, she took a completely different route and followed two super simple steps. Pause and focus on just one thing. She took a breath, held back the flood of advice, and gently asked, "Hey, would it help if we focused on just one thing today?" And Maria, she just nodded with total relief.
But Ruth didn't stop there. She leaned into something so powerful: vulnerable empathy. She actually admitted to Maria that during her own caregiving journey, she totally missed out on respite support for the longest time. Why? Because she honestly thought, well, help is really only for people who are worse off than me. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just missing out. She didn't even realize she qualified. Sharing that little piece of her own struggle instantly connected them, making it safe to talk about what kind of break might genuinely help Maria catch her breath.
And then came the action step. And I love this. Ruth did not hand over some massive, overwhelming binder of resources. She gave Maria exactly one phone number. Just one. She walked her through exactly what to expect when someone picked up the other end of the line, and then they prayed together for a bit of wisdom and courage. It was simple, it was hyper-focused, and most importantly, it was totally manageable. Fast forward a week later, and Maria calls Ruth back. Listen to this update. She said, "I made the call. Even if nothing comes of it, I don't feel as alone." Wow. I mean, what a stunning response. It just perfectly illustrates how graceful, measured information sharing doesn't just check off logistical boxes. It fundamentally cuts down fear and actually restores a caregiver's sense of agency. It puts them back in the driver's seat. All right, let's move into Section 3, Stewardship over Expertise. This is where we fundamentally reframe what it means to be a mentor. And honestly, this should completely relieve any performance anxiety you might be feeling. Think of yourself as a steward, not a walking encyclopedia. Look at the expert versus the guide. An expert feels this intense pressure to have all the answers and fix these incredibly complex problems. And frankly, that's exhausting and it's impossible. A guide, on the other hand, simply stewards the resources that are already out there. You're just helping someone access the tools God has already provided through the community and professionals. That's it. And understanding this dynamic is a real game changer, especially because of how caregivers actually see themselves. You see, most of the time, they just see themselves as a spouse or a child, doing what love requires. Because they rarely slap the official caregiver label on themselves, they end up completely missing out on systemic support, things like helplines or respite care that were designed specifically for them. They literally just don't think those resources apply to their situation. This whole approach is actually built on some beautiful scriptural scaffolding. Proverbs 11:14 reminds us, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls. But in an abundance of counselors, there is safety." As mentors, you are literally providing God's safety. How? Simply by connecting an isolated caregiver to a wider community filled with shared wisdom. By helping them look up and find guidance beyond just themselves, you're drastically reducing their isolation and giving them a safety net. Okay, on to Section 4, Practical Tips for Mentors. Let's get down to the nuts and bolts. How do we actually do this in the real world? Well, here are 4 protective boundaries to keep you confidently stewarding information without accidentally crossing over into that stressful expert territory. First, offer information slowly and always get permission. Second, share what worked for you, but without overwhelming them. Remember the magic of just one thing. Third, and honestly, I absolutely cannot emphasize this enough, always, always refer out any medical, legal, or financial questions to the actual professionals. And lastly, always pray for discernment before you offer up a resource.
So, what does this actually sound like in a normal conversation? Here's a really memorable 3-step formula you can keep in your back pocket for when a caregiver says they just don't know where to start. Step 1, validate the feeling. Just say something simple like, that's a really common experience. Step 2, ask permission to share. Would it be helpful if I shared a couple of options others have found useful? And step 3, empower their choice.
And that third step, empowering their choice, it really all boils down to this one golden question. What feels like a good next step for you? After you've thrown out maybe 1, maximum 2 starting points, you ask them this. Why? Because it hands the dignity and the control right back to the caregiver. It's a gentle reminder that, hey, they know their own situation best.
Finally, Section 5, opening doors, not pushing.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to remember the gentle nature of what you're doing. Providing information is all about opening doors for someone. It is never about pushing them through. When you share resources with a spirit of humility, wisdom, and prayer, that information becomes this profound source of safety and empowerment. It should absolutely never feel like you're just piling another chore onto a caregiver's already overflowing to-do list.
So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. How can your information sharing become a true expression of love rather than just an added pressure? Take some time to really reflect on that as you gear up for this vital ministry. Remember, you don't have to fix it all. Just listen, validate, share gently, and open the door. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and truly, thank you for your incredible heart to mentor those who care.